Get ready to level up your API game. In this video, we will show you how to build faster, scalable, and efficient RESTful APIs in .NET 8 using Entity Framework and Repository Design Pattern. So let's get started with firing up your IDE, that is Visual Studio 2022. Click on the Create a New Project. Make sure to select the Web APIs, select the ASP.NET Core Web API project. Make sure that it's using the C Sharp and click on Next. Give it some name. I'm going to name it .NET Web API. Click on Create. Make sure to select the .NET 8. Currently, we don't require any authentication. HTTPS is good for us. Okay, most of you would have the enable open API support. I'm not going to use the open API support. Basically, it's going to give you the Swagger, and in this Swagger, you can test your API. We will use the Postman to test our APIs. So make sure to uncheck it to follow me along. Click on Create, and boom, your project has been created. Okay, first of all, you have to follow some steps. You have to make some directories to organize your code. So basically, we are using the entity framework, and specifically within the entity framework, we are using the code first approach. This means that we don't have to create the database tables manually with SSMS or any other tool. With the help of code, we are going to define all the database and the tables within that database. So to proceed further, let's create a folder with name models. Within that models folder, I'm going to create another folder that will be called entities. This entities folder is going to hold up all the models that will be translated into your tables. So going to add a class. I will name it products, not products, product, because the model is going to hold up a single record, not multiple records. So add it. Going to add some properties. Make sure to use the Pascal notation because within the C sharp, it's best to use the Pascal notation. And last property that will be float price. That's it. Okay, properties has been added within the model. Now we have to add the DB context for entity framework. But before adding up the DB context, we have to ensure that we have installed two packages. Those are basically SQL Server package and another one is tools package. So firstly, install those two packages. Right click on your Solution Explorer, click on the Manage Nugget packages for solution, or you can go with the help of tools and then click on the Nugget Package Manager, click on the same Manage Nugget packages for solution. It's the same thing. Click for Browse, search SQL. Depending upon your internet connection, and click apply. I accept. Meanwhile, installing, let's search for the other package, that is tools. Make sure to select the Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.Tools. Select it, select your project, install, apply, I accept, and the package has been installed. Okay, fantastic. Now right click on the models folder, click on add, click on the class. Now we are going to create the application DB context. So application DB context. This class is going to inherit the DB context from the package we have just installed, DB context. For those who don't know that that within the C Sharp or ASP.NET, we have to put a colon after the class name and then the uh, class we are either going to inherit or the interface we are going to implement. So DB context, click on the bulb icon, click on using Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Then we are going to create the constructor. Within the constructor, we are going to pass the DB context options, and it's a generic one. We have to pass the application DB context, that is our class. And from that, we are going to initialize the base constructor, that is the constructor of the parent class. Okay, one thing more that we have to include is the DB set. Within that DB set, we have to define the product, and then we are going to name it products. Here, whatsoever you are going to write, it's going to be translated as the table name for your uh, database table. Okay, now we have to add seeders so that we can see some data has been uh, already saved within the database. That is going to be checked with the help of the get API. Seeders. For seeders, we are going to use override method. So over, over, override space on model creating. And within the on model creating, we have to pass objects of product model. I'm just typing some random data. Okay, let's see what's the issue. Okay, so basically, we have missed a thing. Basically, we have to utilize a method that is dot has data. Within the has data function, we have to provide the objects of the new product. So going to create another object, id equal to 2, name equal to LED, some description, and price equal to something. Okay, we have created the entities, we have added the application DB context, we have added the packages. This time we have to register the this DB context in our program.cs. So open up your program.cs. Before var app equal to builder.build, we have to add the DB context. Rather, we have to register the DB context. To register the DB context, register the DB context. Okay, but before registering the DB context, we have to copy the connection string within the app settings.json. I was about to forget this step. So connection strings, I'm going to name it default, and then we have to paste the connection string. Okay, to paste the connection string, I'm going to utilize previously defined database. I'm just going to utilize the database connection string and going to change it up for this new project. So going to copy the connection string from here and going to paste it. Okay, this is my laptop and this is the initial catalog, means your database name. I'm going to name it .NET Web API. Integrated security true, encryption true, trusted server certificate true. Okay, seems good. Now we can add the DB context within the program.cs. So builder.services.add DB context. Within that add DB context, we have to pass our on DB context, that is application DB context, and then within that application DB context, we have to define what server we are using, what are its credentials. So option dot use SQL server. Now we have to pass the connection string. Pass the connection string builder dot configuration dot get connection string, and within that connection string we have to pass the name of the connection string. So what was the name of the connection string? In our case is called default. So we are going to copy it and paste it, default, save it, and we are good to do the migrations. To do the migrations, firstly click on the package manager console in the bottom here. If it's not there, don't worry. Click on tools, click on Nugget Package Manager, click on Package Manager Console. Click on that and add migration. Going to name it init. It's going to basically create a new migration folder here for us, and within that it's going to create a file which contains two methods. First one is up method and second one is down method, and this is automatically going to be created for us. So within the up method we do have the code that defines what our table will be, what our columns will be, what will be their types, and then the seeder which have to data that we have passed from the application DB context from on model creating. So within the down method, it has the option to drop the table. So again, click on the package manager console. This time, update hyphen database. To autocomplete it, just type a little and then press tab. It helps a lot. Okay, click enter and it will, hopefully it's going to create a database without any mess, without any issue. Yes, the database has been created, the table has been created, and the two products were automatically added. Good. Now we can work around the uh, repository design pattern. To create the repository design pattern, firstly, we have to define an interface. But before going to define the repository design pattern, we have to create the RESTful APIs. What are the conditions to achieve the RESTful APIs? To achieve the RESTful APIs, basically, it should have five functionalities. Those are basically going to get all the data from the table, going a specific record, going to create a new record, update a record, delete a record, and all of those APIs will going to give you message. And one other thing is that for all the tables, the messages will be consistent, and the code will be HTTP code will be consistent. In this way, if our APIs are following this pattern, we can say that we have successfully created the RESTful APIs. So it becomes messier sometime, and to achieve better APIs, we have to follow some sort of pattern. And this time we are going to follow a repository design pattern. To create a repository design pattern, click on your project, add folder. This time I'm going to call it data manager, and rather the data manager folder should be within the models. I'm going to create a new folder that will be called repository. Repository. Okay, within the repository, going to add a new class, and this will be an interface. By convention, we have to follow the naming convention of the Microsoft ASP.NET or C Sharp, that we have to the first character, first alphabet of the interface should be I. So it will be I data repository. Okay, I data repository. Within that I data repository, we have to define I enumerable, and this will take an uh, entity. Rather, the I data repository will be a generic, and it will take a T entity. This will take that T entity, and the method is going to implement get all T entity get by ID. We haven't utilized the GUID, so it will be int void add the entity void update the entity, but this time we have to pass two entities. One entity will come from the database, another entity will come from the API. So the entity, we cannot rely totally on the uh, IntelliSense db entity. That's it. And the last method will be delete. Okay, five methods: get all, get by ID, add, update, delete. Perfect. Now we have to define a data manager class for the product entity that is going to implement all these methods, and that class will be utilized within the controller. So basically, we are decoupling the controller and the models, so there won't be any close coupling between the data and the controller. Okay, we already added the data manager. Within that data manager folder, we are going to add the class that is product data manager. Okay, this class is going to implement the iData manager that we just created, and that's going to take the entity product. We have to import all those. We have imported the product entity, then we have to add the did I mess up the name? No, data manager, data repository. Let's see this time. Yes. Now again it's going to give us the error. Why? Because it's an interface. We have to implement the implement all the methods that are defined within the interface, or we have to make this class as an abstract. We don't want to make this class an abstract, so we are going to click on implement interface. It's going to create all these methods, but with a exception. So to add, rather, firstly, we are going to add up the DB context within the data manager, product data manager. To add the DB context, private, read only, we are using the dependency injection. Application DB context, going to name it as DB, and then going to create a constructor. Within that constructor, going to pass the application DB context and this DB equal to application DB context. Okay, now this time to add, simply db.products.add entity and then db.save changes. Okay, next one is delete. To delete, simply db.products.remove. Within that remove, we are going to pass that entity and then db.save changes. Okay, now to get all the records from the database, that is db, I'm going to return it directly. Return db products dot to list. Okay, get element by ID. So return, rather, okay, return db dot products dot single or default. We are utilizing the link, and within the link query, we are going to pass the lambda expression product dot id equals to id we are getting in the input argument. Okay, and next we have to update this. This time we have to map that db entity with the product entity. To map, we are going to use the one by one mapping. Db entity dot name equal to entity dot name, db entity description equal to entity description price, and this time we have to call the db dot save changes. By the way, one thing that within the add method, within the delete method, within the update method, whenever we are changing the data, we are manipulating the data, we have to call the db.save changes. Otherwise, the data is not going to be updated, added, or deleted within the database. So make sure within these three functions, do add the line db.save changes. And this db represents the application db context. Save this thing. Okay, so far so close. Uh, we are going to add a controller. So right click on the controllers folder, click on the controller, and this time we are going to select the API. Within the API controller, I'm going to select the API with read and write actions. It gives us a template, and we do have to change a bit, but more so the template is good for us. So with read and write actions, yes, and make sure to rename this thing. And the values highlighted here is going to represent the route. So make sure whatsoever you name your controller is going to be represented within the route. So naming conventions should be followed. I'm going to name it products. Okay, first one is get method. This get is going to return you all the uh, data within the database. But here we want to utilize the dependency injection. To utilize the dependency injection, we have to register the this data manager class within the program.cs. Otherwise, it won't be accessible within its constructor. So basically, the dependency injection will not be formed if we are not going to register the data manager. So registering the data managers. To register it, build dot services dot add scoped. Within that scoped, we have to pass the interface I data repository from the repository. Okay, and this is also an generic. We have to pass the entity. The entity is product. Make sure to import it as well. And then we have to pass the class that is going to translate this interface, rather going to implement this interface. Okay, that is the product data manager. That's it. Now we have successfully registered the data manager, and now we can utilize it within the controller. To utilize it within the controller, Firstly, we have to create the reference. So private read only. Read only what? This time we are going to utilize the I data repository. That's going to take the entity product, entity pro product, and we are going to name it data repository. I'm going to import this product. Then within the constructor, I data repository, product, and data repository. This dot data repository equal to data repository. Okay, it has been initialized within the constructor. Now to create the get API, rather return within the OK status data repository dot get all, and it's not the string, it's basically what? It's basically we are going to return I action result. One API down, four to go. This is the get method with the ID, so it's going to return us a specific record, and we are going to utilize it later within our code. So we are going to give it a name. This name is responsible uh, for using it within the code. It should be within that bracket, within the parentheses. There we go. Name, we are going to name it get, and then it's not going to return string, it's going to return I action result. Now product, rather I'm going to directly return it within the OK status. We cannot return directly, we have to define these statuses, otherwise it won't be RESTful API. So product equal to data repository dot get by ID. If product equal to null, then return no product found. Within that we can add up a message, product not found. You can get fancier with the messages. I'm okay with this message. Return okay product. Okay, what is not found? What is okay? Okay is basically we are returning the products with the status code 200. Anything that comes within the 200 HTTP code, this means that it's okay, we are getting some results. If we are getting some sort of 400 series, this means not found or any issue, or 401 not authenticated. Within the series of 500, if you are getting a status code within the series of 500, this means there is some sort of errors, especially specifically talking about the server side error. So, uh, not found 404, okay, status 200. This time to add a new product. To add the new product, we have to get the product first from the form body of that API. So product equal to product, and then if product equal to null, then return bad request. If you're giving us empty product, this means you're not going to save any data. So rather than saving empty data within the database, we are going to return it as bad request. Within that bad request, we are going to pass a message. Product is empty. And from white, we are going to change it I action result. Believe me, these messages saves you tons of time when you are consuming this API within the mobile app or within the web application. If messaging is not clear, it's going to be a nightmare for the front end or mobile developer. So if it's okay, then we are going to proceed with data repository dot add product. After that, we are going to return. This time we are going to return with a new status created at route. Within the created at route, we are going to pass three arguments. And what those three arguments are, firstly, we have to define the route. Which route? Get route that we have defined here. And then we have to pass the input argument. What is the input argument? The input argument is ID uh, that is equal to product dot ID, and then the last thing is actual product. Then terminate this line with the help of semicolon, and we are done with the post call. Three down, two to go. Then comes the put API. Put is basically update API. So within the update, we are going to, if rather firstly change it to I action result. From string, it will be product. Firstly, we have to check whether this ID exists within the database. Okay, to check, we are going to call it product db product equal to, we are going to utilize the data repository method get by ID. If db product equal to null, then return not found, return retr. Rather, I'm going to copy the message. I should have copied the whole thing. Okay. Now we have to check if this is empty, then it's the bad request. So I'm not going to type it again. I'm just going to copy it from the post method. In this way, we are going to get clear messages that what is happening within the API. If the product is not found, if the product is empty, empty means the new product we are passing to the method is empty, or the ID that has been passed is wrong, or it doesn't exist within the database. If all those checks are not true, this means we are good to update the products. To update the product, data repository dot update. Within that update, we have to pass the DB products, then the product itself. After that, we are going to return the updated products within the OK status DB product. Okay, now 4 done, 1 to go, that is delete. To delete, we have to find the product first. To find the product first, I'm going to utilize this, and then data repository dot delete delete db product, and then the last thing is to return with status no content. This means no content is basically 204, that the product has been deleted, and we haven't converted it to I action result. Convert it. Okay, now we have created the API successfully, and we have to test it. When we were creating the project, we had the option to utilize this Swagger, but most of the time we have to test the APIs within the Postman, so I'm going to utilize the Postman. If you are not familiar with the Postman, then you can download it with this postman.com/downloads. Click on the download button depending upon your system specifications. Mine is Windows and 64-bit, so I have already downloaded it. Rather, I have already installed the Postman. So I'm going to open it up and going to utilize it. Okay, your interface might be different. You have to sign in the Postman. I'm going to recommend it. You're going to you should use the Gmail to sign in. It's convenient. So start up your project. Hopefully, it's not going to give us any error. It's building up the project. If it's built successfully, it's going to open up the browser. Within the browser, it's opening up the default API. Default APIs are basically weather forecast. These are default APIs that are already within the project. If you want to change it, you can do it with the program.cs. Here you can define the startup for startup endpoint, or you can utilize the. Okay, I'm going to test it within the Postman. To test it within the Postman, going to copy the URL, click on this plus icon, paste this URL, write. Here I wanted to show that it's the route for this products controller is API slash controller name, API slash products. So write API slash products. It's using the get method. It's fine. We don't have to add any of the headers. If you want, you can, for example, you can add accept application slash JSON content. If you're not going to add these headers, it's going to work fine. Application slash JSON. Click on send. The status code is 200. It took 1802 milliseconds and returned us the data that we have utilized as the seeders. If you want to get a specific record, put a slash in front of your URL and put the ID. I'm going to get the second record, and it's going to give us only the specific record we have asked for. Now I'm going to add a new record. So to add a new record, you have to select the post. The API will be same within the body. I have just copied it so that I can easily transform it for the new record. Click on the body, click on raw, and then paste what we have already copied. This time we don't have to pass the ID. ID is going to be automatically generated as the ID is auto increment within the table. I'm going to name it router. You can add any product. I'm just adding some random products. Okay, send. We got the status 201 that is created with the record that is newly created. Now I'm going to update this record. To update this record, we have to pass the ID. ID is 3. From post, we are going to change it to put, and then router. Within that router, I'm going to add up the model WR700, I believe, and this thing. Going to update this price from 1000 to 2000. Being lazy, I'm just going to paste update. Send, and the record has been updated. To ensure that it's actually updated, we are going to fetch all the records. I'm going to change it to get, send, and yes, the record has been updated as well. Now I'm going to delete the second record. To delete the second record, you have to select the delete and then /2. Send it, and it's going to return us 204, no content, without any data. So if we get all the records, then we are getting only 2 records. This means that all our APIs are working fine. Thanks for joining me on this journey to API mastery. Remember, with .NET 8, Entity Framework, and Repository Pattern, the sky is the limit for your API development. Like, share, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.